Welcome to Write with Love. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, best-selling author, speaker, and creative entrepreneur. Each week, I chat to passionate and inspiring authors about their journey in creative writing. Some are traditionally published, some do it themselves. Everyone's journey is different, and everyone has something interesting to say. We all love love and love what we do. Today's show is brought to you by our amazing fans and supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show and get some awesome bonus episodes, go to patreon.com/Sarah Williams Author to learn more. Now here's today's show. G'day, I'm Sarah Williams. Thanks for joining me for episode 45 of Write with Love. I'm recording this on Friday, the 26th of October 2018, and as this goes live, I will be on the Gold Coast, training under the tutelage of editor extraordinaire Margie Lawson. And yes, I will be interviewing her live for this show while I'm there. Remember, nominations for Ozrom Today Awards are now open. Last year, I was nominated for Best New Author of 2017, which was very cool, thank you. This year, the Reader's Choice categories are Best New Author, Best Established Author, Author of the Year, Cover of the Year, and Book of the Year. You can nominate in multiple categories, but the authors must be Australian. The website is ausromtoday.com. Also, the Australian Romance Readers Association are hosting 3, possibly 4 author signing events in March 2019, and reader tickets are on sale now for a romantic rendezvous. The location and dates are Brisbane the 23rd of March, Sunday 24th of March, Melbourne 30th of March, and possibly Perth on the 31st of March if they get the numbers. I'll be at the Brisbane signing and would love to see you there. I'll have all my books as well as lots of free stuff for you, and if you're a patron you can claim your hug. The ARA website is australianromancereaders.wordpress.com. Just a reminder that I have 2 books available for pre-order at the moment. The Dairy Farmer's Daughter, which is the first in my new Heart of the Hinterland series, is out on 28th of November 2018, and you can order it through your favourite online shop or contact me directly for a paperback. And check out the 30-second book trailer on my website, YouTube and social media. If you love Australian rural romance, then for only 99 cents, you can read 6 of Australia's favourite best-selling full-length novels and 1 brand new short story. Annie Seaton, Suzanne Bellamy, S.E. Gilchrist, Anne B. Harrison, S.M. Spencer, Philippa Neffrey Clark, and I have joined forces for a combined Kindle-only box set called Outback Hearts. It will be live on Amazon on December 1st, but you can pre-order it now. If you would like to join me here in the beautiful Maleny hinterland, I have 2 spots left on the Writers' Retreat I'm hosting next year, May 31st till June 3rd. All the details are on my page over at sarahwilliamsauthor.com/Maleny-Writers-Retreat. We will be writing, talking craft and having fun. I will also show you all the steps involved in uploading a manuscript to distributors and how to professionally self-publish. And if you miss out on that one, there will be another one. I'm planning in October 18th to the 21st next year in Noosa. So get in touch with me as soon as you can if you want a spot there. We're already half sold out. And if you are an author who would like a shout out on the show for as little as $25, send an email to sarah@serenadepublishing.com or become a patron at patreon.com/Sarah Williams Author for more information. Next week, I'm chatting to the Queen of Regency, Anna Campbell. Since I discovered she lives close by, we filmed it live at her house after chatting for ages over homemade shortbread. Today is all about T.M. Clark. Born in Zimbabwe, Tina has lived in South Africa, London, and now lives right here in Queensland. She has a range of children's novels, and her newest novel, Nature of the Lion, is out now. Here's the interview, and I'll see you next week. Today I'm chatting to Tina Marie Clark, who writes as T.M. Clark. Thanks for joining me, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's awesome to be here.
No worries at all. So tell us about how you got into writing and your journey so far.
How I got into writing. I was actually, I suppose I was writing technical manuals because I was in the quality assurance business. But so I guess I was always writing, but I wanted to write when I left school. I actually wrote 3 small chapters of Mills and Boon because I used to love Mills and Boon. I still do. And then I wrote them by hand. I don't even know what happened to them in the end. And, it was one of those things that got put in the cupboard and just got forgotten about. Then when I had my kids, I had one, and I used to tell him stories. And my husband said to me, well, you should write them down. And then I had the second one, and then I would, tell them stories. And I went to Paris, and they had these, I started writing them down, just on the computer. And then they had these magazines just around the corner from the Moulin Rouge, actually. And they had magazines in the rooms. And I was flicking through this magazine, and I went, wow, they pay £50 for 250 words in these books. And he went, and I went, and they can't even speak English properly. And my husband went, well, if you think you can do better, then, do it. So I tore the page out. And I went back to England, and I wrote a story, and I sent it in, and it got £50. I went, yes, this is easy. I can do this. And then I went, maybe I should do it properly. And so started on a correspondence course, and didn't get further than like 2 units. It was just not me and study are not good.
Yeah.
So so it was all. I just sort of carried on writing and then started attending courses and basically learning anything I could about the craft. And I just eventually, in 2004, I found a group of people in Brisbane, and eventually I found a publisher who would publish, this children's book, because I was targeting children's books at that stage. My kids were still very into picture books, and it was just so hard, in that time. The internet wasn't what it is now. And, so it was quite something to get all the information together and to actually find who you were going to get published with, and who was accepting which books. And so I got published eventually in 2005. I had a little reader come out with Macmillan Education. And then by then I had gone, no, this is too hard. And I joined up with 2 other authors, and we decided we were going to have a conference, because none of the other big conferences were being held for children's writers at the time. And, nobody would touch us with a barge pole. Eventually, Brisbane Writers Festival said, yep, they would take me on, as a fringe of their festival. So we went, all right. So we signed up for that. And and I suppose 2006 was the first CYA conference, and it just sort of went from there. And unfortunately, by the time we actually got on it, actually put it on, the other 2 ladies had got quite sick, and it all landed on my lap. So it was it became my conference. But I'm forever grateful to Daha Bates and to Sharon Norris, or Sharon Lee, she's now, because it was the 3 of us got together and did it, and so the concept was all of us. But I was lucky enough to just carry it on. So so we sort of did that, and then I started concentrating more on writing novels as such, because I had written a book. So I went and I had joined already. I was already a member of Romance Writers Australia, and I had seen how much craft and stuff they got at their conference. So it was, I knew that there was something lacking in the children's writers festivals and stuff. So I did that, and I eventually, after a lot of years of targeting the wrong publishers, I've realized once I did 5DI, which was a romance writers initiative, which was amazing. I had both Marion Lennox and Fiona Brand both tell me that I did not write romance and that I wrote literary fiction. So, when 2 big authors tell you that, you have to actually listen. Okay, hang on a minute. So eventually, I had gone to conferences in Washington and all over because I really believed that my stories were romances, but apparently they weren't. So yeah, and then in 2012, I was in the lift at a romance writers conference, and I saw Haley Nash, and she said to me, "Oh, the lift," and I went, "Oh no, I was pitching," because I was at a conference, and she said to me, "I never knew you wrote," because she knew me as, a children's conference person, a person who does coordination. And I went, "Yeah, no, I am an author." And so she said, "Oh, what did you write?" I said, "Oh, Haley, you don't have to do this." And I told her every single reason why she shouldn't buy my book. And every single reason. And of course, I started with, "But Haley, I kill my hero." And I went, I said, "You're Harlequin. You don't have people who kill heroes." And she went, "We do. Haven't you heard of our Mira line?" And I went, "Yeah, but you have to have an agent to get in." And I haven't got an agent. And she said, "No, I can take it." Anyway, short story, long story. She eventually, about 2 weeks after conference, I had to talk to her again for something administration-wise. And she said, "Where's your novel?" And I went, "No, you don't have to do this. You're just being nice." And she said, "No, I want to read it. Send it." So I sent it. So yeah, so there we go. So then I sold, and it's still sort of like really hard to believe that after targeting that publisher for so long, and totally giving up because it was like, okay, I knew that they weren't, but there's different subgenres and everything, and she loved the book and she bought it, and I'm fifth book this year, so they obviously like what I do.
And that's one of the great things about conferences. It's the information you learn, but it's the networking. And
absolutely,
yeah. I mean, I know most of us anyway are introverts, and we like staying at home and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it's definitely getting out of your comfort zone and getting those networks and knowing those people and talking to them, genuinely being interested. And
absolutely.
And then stuff like this happens. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I always tell everybody it was a real elevator pitch.
It really was.
Pitch. Telling her, and you got all these classes, and they all tell you, you get in the elevator, take the opportunity. And I told her everything why she didn't want to buy it, but yeah, it was.
She still did.
I can't say that for everybody, but it worked for me somehow. Maybe because I wasn't so nervous, because maybe when I sit and I pitch to people, I just get so nervous I just babble. So maybe because I was just talking to her more friendly, and it was good. Anyway, so I sold it.
That's awesome. So a little bit of background about you. So your accent, obviously. So you're from Zimbabwe. So tell us about, roughly growing up there and how that's influenced your writing.
Okay, so I was born in Zimbabwe. I grew up until I was like 12 in Zimbabwe. I grew up I lived various places, but then we lived on a farm in the Nyamanjlovo area. So where my dad was, we were dairy farmers, but my dad was also, as most people were there, he was a hunter, and so we grew up in a very much a hunting environment, and in a very rural farm. I spoke a lot of Ndebele, and I my English was fine. My mom was there. We had our maids and everything else, and and I guess I was really spoiled because, there's some things my cousins tell me about what I did there, and I go, "Did I really do that?" I go, "Yeah." So I had this very, charmed life. And then when my father died, my mother decided to go back to South Africa. So she took us from this environment where we had been at boarding school and we had never even had to polish our own shoes. We would make our own bed and that was it. And then in the holidays we would come home, and in the weekends we would come home, and you just take off your clothes and chuck them on the floor, and the maid picks them up. And then I went to South Africa, and we had no maid and no house of our own. We lived in a boarding hostel because my mother became a boarding hostel matron, and basically I had to learn to do everything. We had to learn to drive a washing machine, and I had to learn to drive a vacuum cleaner, and that dishes don't wash themselves. They actually have to be washed by somebody, and how to wash them. And it's I suppose when you're 12 years old and you're suddenly learning chores, for the first time that you've done them in your life, it was kind of interesting. So in lots of ways, I suppose it changed me a lot because I became very, very responsible very, very quickly. My mom is a lovely, lovely person, but she lives with her head in the clouds. So for a long time, it was like, us girls took responsibility. Yeah. So it's it was so it was good though, and it was very different. Obviously, in South Africa, I had gone from a place where everybody lived together and everybody was acceptable to each other. And we had blacks and whites all together, and coloureds and Indians and everything else. Mm-hmm. And then in South Africa, we were actually segregated by language. So you had the English school and you had the Afrikaans school. And we couldn't stay in the Afrikaans school where my mum was because we were English children. So our boarding school was actually just up the hill. So we would actually have to, at night, we would go and we would wave out the window from the upstairs bathroom, and she would then come out of the hostel at the bottom to wave goodnight to us from her hostel, because we weren't allowed to actually be with her. So it was quite, we were still in boarding school, but just in a different, because we were English and she spoke Afrikaans, which we didn't.
Yeah.
And she was in the Afrikaans hostel. And then eventually she came up into our hostel after about 3 years. She came up into ours. And it was awesome having your mum as your own matron in hostel. My mum is naughty as I am. And there were times where the other matron came looking for the noise, and we were shoving my mother in the cupboard so that she didn't get into trouble. And then, and then after that, I actually went to Durban and worked in Durban and stuff. And then, met my hubby and got married and all of that. But eventually then so I think that a lot of my love, especially, I think my cultural love, my love for different cultures in Africa probably comes from the time I spent in South Africa, because I learned to sort of appreciate what I had, if that makes any sense. And then like the girls in the hostel where we were, with my mum, they were so torn, because they could see, here were these, for the black people, they were used to already being split apart from their families and stuff like that, because it was laws and things. But here they were seeing that, these white people were also having the same problem. And I think that's sort of like where I was so lucky, because, in the weekends they would plait. I used to have long hair, and they would plait my hair in these beautiful, tight little plaits, and it would take them like all Friday afternoon, all Saturday. I think I would wear it like on Sunday, go to church, or I'd get into trouble for going to church with that type, because I had, school uniform on with plaited hair. And then, on Monday morning, it all had to come out to go to school. So, but it was such fun, and it was, and I would sit there listening to what they would do, like what their families were doing and how they were on their farms, because they were in the Transkei and stuff like that. So I think I got a very broad understanding of sort of like an empathy for everybody, because, there was a lot of girls. There was like 100 of us girls in our hostel, and then there was like about 50 boys or something. And there was a lot of kids who were with us as well, who were very different, and who'd been sent away to boarding school for various reasons and stuff like that. And, and I think it gave me a good grounding and understanding, and maybe a little bit more depth, to who I am, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
On your screen, but it popped up.
That's good. So tell us about. So you've written your children's books, and they're doing really well.
Yeah, the kids' books are doing so good, and I'm so happy about that at long last. It's like, when I started being a mom, and like I will, these picture books with all these beautiful, illustrations and stuff, and I just sort of thought it was just so beautiful. So slowly, I was just so lucky because I was already in the children's industry, and I knew so many people, and I run this competition as part of CYA. One of the stories I'd put up for them to sort of like for the people to enter to sort of illustrate had been done, and it was called I think I called it Slowly at the time even, and it was I called it Catch a Monkey. And then, so the illustrator, Helen Magison, she had actually done them in like 2013. And then she had done these beautiful illustrations, and she had won, and she had actually been picked up by New Frontier, and she had gone on to become, she did the re-illustration of the Velveteen Rabbit. Wow. So she became very big quite fast. And, then when I said I wanted to do this book and I wanted her as the illustrator, the publisher said to me, do you think she'll do it? And I went, yeah, I do. So ours was a little bit lucky because we were already friends, and, because, Brisbane's not that big. You think it's like, so many million people, but the actual industry itself, the writing fraternity is quite small, and it's very supportive. And I find that the romance writers and the children's writers are very, very much alike. Probably the biggest difference is the romance writers just come into your space and hug you. Whereas the children's writers take a little bit of time to sort of like talk, and then they'll hug you. Oh, it's so good to see you, sort of like thing, and then they'll hug you.
Yeah.
So, but they're both really, really supportive in the industry. So when Rochelle at Wombat said that she would take it on, I was really excited. And and then I had Emily there who did the edit, and and it was a very, very different experience, obviously, because I was only doing half the book and the other half was being done by an illustrator. And it's a very different book in numbers, because I'm obviously with Harlequin, I have these big print runs, and and it's in the Kmart magazine and Target magazines and stuff like that, and and you go into every bookshop and it's there. And then suddenly with a smaller publisher, it doesn't have the same sort of the same amount of airtime, if you want to call it that. But yet it still was doing so well, and it got picked up by, like the school supplies and stuff like that. And that's what you really need with a children's book. Even if it's a slow burner and it starts, small, it just starts to sell. And then, and the more things that happen with it, the better it is. So yeah, when I got nominated this year for that award thing, it was an award thing. And it's gone straight out of my head.
Well, let's talk about awards. So in 2014, you got shortlisted for the Queensland Literary Awards for My Brother But One. So that must have been pretty exciting, especially, I'm just trying to get my head around this, that you were published with Harlequin Mira and you got nominated.
I know. I was in total shock. Obviously, I'm actually dyslexic, so to make it worse, that book actually had quite a rough beginning. Hayley left, and she went to go work for Macmillan, and I was left without an editor. And the ladies who actually picked it up, and who ran with it until Sue Brockhoff got there, like much, much later in the year, did an amazing job, because they weren't trained editors, anyway. So by the time it had gone to print, we had a couple of mistakes in it. Like between the first print and the second print run, there's like over 200 changes in the book. Like once Sue actually had a chance to look at it and go, Tina, what happened here? No, and I had to say, hey, I'm dyslexic. I didn't read those as that. I just read them as what they were. So yeah, so Harlequin and it was a big learning curve that we had to, they've put in like another layer for me, so that they do realize that I am, what I read is not necessarily what's on the paper.
Right.
So it's so for me, for a literary award, it was like, whoa. But it was a roller coaster ride. Seriously, it was like I couldn't believe it, and and then going to the actual awards ceremony and everything was interesting, and it was. I think as well, because we didn't know anything about it, and like Harlequin had never been nominated, so they didn't know anything about it either, and so it was a bit of a, like, about 2 days before I went, well, does my publisher come? And they went, we can ask them, and it was like, well, haven't you asked them already? And I just assumed that they would have been asked. So it was a lot of things, like learning curve for everybody, but it was really fun. It was nice. It was, you kind of feel like, so, they put you on a list like that, and it's like, it's surreal. I mean, the lady who won, like, she was amazing. And I go, wow, my book, sat next to hers,
Oh, that's fantastic. And so last year in November 2017 was the last one that's been released, the most recent, Child of Africa. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Oh, Child of Africa. Child of Africa is actually it's a heart story for me, because it's sort of, it's got so much in it that is actually true story, and so much in it that is like based on other people. And then there's obviously a lot of fiction in it as well. So in 2010, I took a trip with my boys. We went back to Zimbabwe to go and visit my aunt. My aunt and uncle live, obviously they live on a safari farm. So they live in Bulawayo, and then the camp. They've got a couple of camps. So my cousin Sharon owns Melinda Safaris, And so we went to go and stay at the safari camp. So we stayed at Ivory Lodge, and we had this amazing time and everything. But before we left, my husband wasn't happy because he had to stay and work for a while. And so I was going to take the boys and go to Zimbabwe. And my aunt had said to me, it's not an election year. It's a great year to come. There had been trouble in Zimbabwe and stuff like that. So my husband he's a typical South African. He is very, very protective of the little woman. And my dad-in-law is the same. But it's, they both, we all butt heads quite often because I'm quite a strong person and, I want to just do my thing. And I've become very first world. And my husband says, yeah, you're now a first world princess. So, I can drive from here to Mackay, so why can't I drive from Durban up to Bulawayo? It's, it's the same distance. The chance of me getting hijacked from here to Mackay are like Zippo, and the chance of me getting hijacked in South Africa from Durban to up to Bulawayo is pretty big.
Yeah.
So, so I got my cousin actually had just finished his 2 terms in Afghanistan, so he flew down from Zimbabwe and he actually drove with us, and so I took my dad-in-law's ute, as you would call it here. We call it a bakkie. So I took the bakkie up, and and Alistair just drove around with us and stuff, and it was really awesome. And I got to know this youngster. I mean, he was like 23, and and just when you're in your you're approaching like your 40s and stuff, it was quite interesting to just go back, and because I married my first boyfriend, real boyfriend, I didn't have all this angsty stuff, and I think that's probably what was missing from my romance. That's
a good point.
I don't have that whole angsty thing in my repertoire. So yes, I listened to how his love life had gone for the last couple of years and stuff like that. And it was actually really lovely though, because then we would go around, we would go to places and stuff, and it was awesome. And he was just kind of lost. He had been fighting for this cause for so long, since he was 16, and he got home and everything had changed, and so it actually started ticking already then in 2010, 2011. The story was already sort of like baking in my head, and I would just jot down things. I've got like folders on different stories that I collect, and every time I think of something, I just go quickly put it in that folder. So I had this whole folder of that story basically already done, and the story was just there, and in Ndlovu, she was, she's the elephant. She just took over that story because she just wanted her voice. When I was writing it, she just wanted her voice to sort of like tell it. And in Ndlovu, she was real as well, because although she was like many years before, she actually belonged to a friend of my mom's who was nursing with my mom like 40 years ago. They had this little Ndlovu that they had, but it didn't have a good ending because in the 1960s they believed that you had to be cruel to be kind, and and they didn't do the orphanages and things like that, the animal orphans and stuff like that. They would often just put the things out of their misery. So so I wanted to write a happier ending for that little elephant, so I did.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, that's awesome. So what are you working on now?
At the moment, my edits for my new book have just arrived. So The Nature of the Lion will be out at the end of this year, 2018. And the cover, but I can't show you the cover. But it's just gorgeous, I must tell you. So that'll come out at the end of this year. It's back to Shooting Butterflies. That was my second book. That was a bit of a dark book, and I think this one's gone back to the more crime, more dark, more sort of psychological as well, sort of more a thriller than what obviously what Child of Africa was. So I think after such a light and book, it was time to go dark again.
That's true. That is absolutely fantastic. Well, where can we find you online, and obviously stay with bated breath until we can see this gorgeous cover?
If you find me online at tmclark.com.au.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Tina. That was really fun.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. I told you I talk too much. I tend to just chatter and chatter.
That's all good.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Jump onto my website, sarahwilliamsauthor.com, and join my mailing list to receive a free preview of my books and lots of other inspiration. If you like the show and want it to continue, you can become a sponsor for just a couple of dollars a month. Go to patreon.com/sarahwilliamsauthor. And remember to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a review of the podcast. I'll be back next week with another loved up episode. Bye!